Good afternoon. This is Steve with Real Progressives. I have fought to resist getting involved in any of the nonsense that's going on right now. And I am not going to jump in to call anyone out by name. I'm just going to tell a story and hope that it reaches the necessary audience. But I've lived a life where I've watched people tear each other apart, say stupid things, very, very dumb things that have haunted them for a very, very long time. And then I've seen people who have graciously worked with each other to try to, keep things in a way where people could be restored, where they could actually maintain their integrity, maintain their, maintain their character, not be just completely and utterly sidelined. And in any event, very, very sorry that it seems like activism has been taken over, if you will, by just destroying anything in your way. And for me, I've been torn apart in times in the past for saying something that people didn't understand. I just want to use an example, of this. And somebody told somebody something about me, they told a friend, and so on. And all of a sudden, I was spending weeks defending myself against an utter smear campaign. And there was no getting out of it. There was no good way to make peace. People found their target and they stayed glued to it and they wouldn't let go, like a pit bull with a piece of meat in its mouth. So we oftentimes view the world through our own lens once we've experienced something. That said, we've got a situation here going on right now where people that I'm very, very close to have said some things that I really, really wish they hadn't said, and continue to say some things I really, really wish they wouldn't have said. And there's probably no winning for anybody here because, quite frankly, those people attacking them had real good opportunities to do so in a fashion that would have allowed them to restore themselves and not allow this to blow up into a brouhaha. So I'm watching this happen because I've experienced the pile-on, the initial pile-on. And I've experienced the absolute zero room to make a mistake. But that's not what we're dealing with here. What we're dealing with now has become something more than that, something different than that. What we're dealing with is people that are now no longer hearing each other. You're dealing with people that are doubling down on a mistake instead of just saying, I made a mistake, I shouldn't have said it, I shouldn't have viewed it, maybe I wasn't aware of the circumstances. And take a page and learn. Take a page and learn. But that's not what's happening. We're having people dig their heels in deeper and deeper. And this is a real opportunity for this movement to come together and accept the fact that African Americans have dealt with tremendous odds, tremendous issues that none of us in the white community will ever know. The closest thing I can say to being in that world is being an alcoholic and knowing the stink eye that I get, knowing the lack of respect that I get for that, knowing that people look at me differently because they know I'm an alcoholic, and knowing that it's really difficult to dig out from that. It's really hard to change perceptions. So as you watch the situation going on, with Claudia, Debbie, Anoa, Jackie Lukman, and the gang, the battle lines are drawn, okay? The battle lines are drawn, and it doesn't have to be this way. It truly doesn't have to be this way. Our movement has got to be able to handle diversity better than it has been handling it. Our movement has got to handle diversity better than what it's been handling it. And I don't think that there's any possibility of our movement ever achieving what it could achieve if we as a movement don't seek to restore one another, if we don't seek to find ways to bridge gaps and bridge divides. I don't approve of any of the handling of this, on any end of this. Let me just say that. I don't approve of any of the handling of this. I despise call-out culture. With the heat of 1,000 suns, despise call-out culture. But I also despise when things are different and you don't understand them, and instead of asking questions, doubling down on your prior understanding. When you don't understand, you ask questions. Just like when people fire off about me as an alcoholic, and the court's looking at me a certain way before I even have my first word out of my mouth, I understand to some small measure, to some very, very small measure, what it means to be oppressed, what it means to be looked down on. The difference is that you don't know I'm an alcoholic until I tell you I'm an alcoholic. But you know someone is African American by sight, and they are judged before they get their first shot. And there are issues that are very, very specific to all communities like that. I really, really, really wish that Claudia and Debbie could take a step back and just say, for their own good and for the good of the movement, let's take a moment and let me reflect on this. Maybe I didn't have the best understanding. But I want to tell you, I've got screenshots, and I mean lots of screenshots, of evil, evil, evil comments. I've got screenshots of comments that are so inhumane, so unbelievably vile. And I have experienced the smear campaigns and the gossip. So there is an awful lot here that we could do differently. There is an incredible amount that we could do differently across this entire thing. How we do it, I don't know. I focus on economics. That's for everyone. My focus is on economics. But when I see people within our movement that are not seeking understanding, that are not seeking to build greater awareness of oppression. And quite frankly, in dealing with one another in a very, very, very understanding and kind way. When I see the negativity from all these different approaches because people are not willing to listen to one another. You must, as an alcoholic, let me just tell you this. This is only my story. I've only got one. It's my own. I won't tell you about anybody else's story. But I can tell you right now that for me to stay sober, I had to look at my demons. I had to do a fourth step, fearless and thorough moral inventory. And then when I was wrong, I had to promptly admit it. I had to promptly admit it. I had to look inside myself, and I had to see how any of my behavior may or may not have harmed another person. That right there, my friends, I believe transcends. I believe it transcends race. I believe it transcends gender. I believe it transcends any issue that we have. I believe that when we look at our own side of the street and we look to see where we have done harm and we seek to make amends, except when to do so would injure them or others, that we can do wonderful things. But if we don't acknowledge when we have done wrong, when we don't acknowledge when we have stooped to levels that are unacceptable, when we don't admit that we have made an error, we set ourselves up and those who love us around us, we set everyone up for pain and suffering. Everyone suffers when we don't allow ourselves to humble ourselves, to right-size ourselves, and to examine our part in a given problem. I only have one story to tell, and it's my own. I do not in any way, shape, or form believe that I am judge, jury, and executioner. But I believe that I have a role to play. And for what I'm telling you, I am going straight to the only story I know. And that right there, my friends, is checking yourself. Checking yourself and asking, did I make an error? Because I personally can't control anyone else around me. I can only look and see what I've done. And if I've said something insensitive, if I have not paid attention to my surroundings, if I have not taken the time to consider what someone else might be going through, and then I screw myself up by saying something ham-handed, the only way out of that scenario, the only way out, is to humble yourself and ask for forgiveness. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means you made a mistake. You can learn from mistakes. Now is not forever. You can restart your day anytime you need. If you live in a world where every day you exist, you have to pay for a problem you committed 100 years ago, a week ago, folks, you have to make amends to those whom you have harmed. Now, I'm not familiar with safe spaces and all this stuff. I'll be perfectly honest with you. Some of these things are starting to come about. Some of them may be really, really good. Some of them, I don't know. I don't know. But I do know this. I have been around Claudia for an awful long time. And I think she's tried to do an awful lot of good work. But I don't think that she handled this the best that I've ever seen. And I think she needs to probably take a minute and stop. And just stop. and take a moment to think about the feedback she's getting. It's very painful, some of the stuff that has been said to her. I'm not going to lie. I've gotten to see it. It's awful. Did she do something boneheaded? Did she say something that she shouldn't have said? Does she have an incorrect way of viewing the world that makes me sad sometimes? Yes. But the things I've seen said have been flat out like, why don't you kill yourself kind of stuff. We've got to find a way to come together because this is a microcosm of a bigger picture. You understand that. This is not this situation. This is not them versus them. This is our movement finding a way to be inclusive and our movement finding a way to bear with each other's inadequacies. Do you realize something? I talk about economics. And there is a part of me that wants to go around and start writing articles about anyone that gets economics wrong. Because people that get economics wrong are killing people. That's real. That's fucking real. So when you don't understand that cutting federal spending kills people, you are by extension a murderer by proxy. So I thought about naming names for those who get economics wrong and calling them murderers. Running around and calling every single person out there by name, in public, in articles, in any other way I can, calling them murderers. And then I thought to myself, that's not going to necessarily change, right? People aren't going to necessarily listen. And then they're going to get tribal. And the people that get economics wrong are going to side together. And the people that get economics right, which is a very small group, are going to side together. And nothing's going to happen. So I said, okay, that's probably not the best way to make people who are murdering people through bad economic discussions. It's probably not the way it's going to help change it. So how can I work to get people to understand how vital this is? I don't know. Again, this is my story. I don't have the other story. I can only tell you that our movement cannot survive in silos. That we have to find ways to bear each other's burdens. And we have to find a way to understand what each other is going through. Or we will fail. We can be our own worst enemy here. We can be our own worst enemy here. Our enemy is very, very organized. And they don't suffer for the things we suffer for. Being enlightened, being people that are trying to fight for all races, creeds, colors, religions, genders, you name it. They don't have to worry about that. They just pull forward. We do. We bear the weight of that. And so we have to be cognizant of that. But I can tell you right now, hate speech is hate speech. And when we resort to hate speech, when we resort to threats, when we resort to the things I have screenshots of, and when we resort to some of the evil that I've seen, we lose our high ground. We lose all. We lose it all. We lose it all. We have got nothing to show for it once we go there. It really does come down to keeping your side of the street clean. And it really does come down to understanding each other. You know, if you've ever been to an AA meeting, and I'm not telling you to go to an AA meeting, I'm just telling you this is how I learned tolerance and how I learned understanding of different people. I walked into AA rooms and I saw people of all walks of life, every one of them. People without teeth, people completely and utterly gross and smelling bad, hadn't showered in weeks, homeless, to wealthy senators, congressmen, doctors, lawyers, and everybody in the same room with the same ailment. We're all suffering from alcoholism and we're all going to die if we don't work together. So our ailment united us in a common bond that allowed each other to work through some of the most oppressive, painful things you've ever seen. You go into your office place someday and tell them you're an alcoholic and see what happens. You know, we united around a common problem. And it didn't matter what color we were, we all shared the same dilemma. We were going to die if we drank again. Climate change is going to kill us all. The environment is going to kill us all. That's something we can relate to. If we don't have health care, we're all going to die. We're all going to get sick. That's something we should be able to relate to. We all need to be educated so that we can provide for our families. That's something that we should all be able to relate to. At the end of the day, folks, this movement is full of a bunch of broken people, full of a bunch of people that have a lot of issues and a lot of troubles and a lot of problems. We're like a hospital for the 99%, if you will. And you know, understanding white privilege, understanding that sometimes it takes a gentle approach to make people understand it, because it's not readily apparent, because they don't feel like they've done anything. They don't feel like they're trying to be nasty or mean. And yet they don't realize that they benefit from white privilege. I benefit from white privilege. You know, my kids will benefit from white privilege. And yet at the same time, though, to make progress, we have to understand that we have to get rid of that privilege and work together as a team. It should be human privilege. It should be not even human privilege. It should just be right and wrong. But it's not there. We've got history to deal with. We've got you realize it's only been 50 years that it's been legal for interracial couples to get married in the United States? Do you realize it's only been 50 years? I mean, we're not that far away, folks. A lot of horrible stuff is going on today in the United States. If you don't understand something, it's better to ask questions. Sometimes you've got to be the student. You cannot always be the fucking teacher. I wanted to avoid this like the plague, folks. I'm not even lying to you. I didn't want to talk about this, not because I don't want to talk about the subject, but because I know these people. I know Claudia and Debbie. I know Anoa and Jackie. I know all these people, and they're all good people. Do you see what I'm saying? These are friends. These are people that fight. These are people that work day in and day out. And yet these are people. They're people. They make mistakes. They err. We have got to allow room for people to restore themselves. We cannot heap coals on their head and bury them. We have got to find a way, because we are not badass enough as a movement to discard people, to shun them, to shut them down, to stifle them. We are not that awesome of a movement. And if we don't find a way to educate one another and bring people back into the fold, stop freaking isolating people and castigating them. We've got to find a way to educate and restore. Humble, educate, and restore. Yeah. God damn, I didn't want to have to deal with this. You know, I wanted to say not my monkeys, not my circus, but I'm telling you right now, this movement thrives, sadly. Sadly, this movement thrives on tearing things down. And it needs to get back to talking about what it's for. It really, really, really needs to present a positive go forward message so that we are able to restore people, planet, everything. We cannot survive without each other. I swear to God, I'm going to tell you something. I haven't even told my own team this. I was this close to shutting Real Progressives down just because I'm so tired of not being able to make people understand how intrinsic, how basic, how fundamental economics is. And how fundamental it is that we as people need to understand one another and take the time to learn from each other and not be a fucking full cup. It's the full cup. I know everything. Fuck that. Fuck that. It's very, very painful to watch good people destroy each other. And it's very, very painful to watch a movement that is requiring all of us eat itself out from the inside. Folks, we've got to do better. We have got to do better. And we've got to bear each other's burdens because that's what it takes to win. And winning is our only shot because this is life and death. If it was just convenience, it's life and death. It's life and death that we win this. Our movement requires every single race, every single gender, every single ethnicity. It requires all stations in life uniting together. That's it. That's my message. I hope I don't get in trouble. I hope somebody doesn't go run off and take something I've said and somehow or another make me out to be a bad guy. But it's happened to me before, and I've got screenshots of that too. Some people say my style triggers them. They don't like my style. But yet I sit there 7 days a week fighting for this movement. And you know what? You get tired of getting kicked in the fucking teeth because somebody doesn't like something you said or did. So I understand being thin-skinned also, because trust me, there are times when I want to say, you know what? Are you sure you want to do that, Mr. Keyboard Warrior? I'm 6 foot 260 and I'm full of piss and vinegar. Are you sure you meant to say that to me through the keyboard? Because if we ever met face to face, I'm guessing you wouldn't say that. And then I realize, Steve, you're 48 years old, a father of 9, and it's time to grow up and grow some thick skin. But it's there. Every once in a while, I want to say, I know you didn't just say that. I know you didn't just say that. You and I, it wouldn't take much time. I'd end it quick, I promise you. And then I realize, that's not building the movement. That's not building the movement. To be a leader, you got to take some hits. And Claudia and Debbie, you took some hits. I'm asking you, as someone that loves you both, just say you're sorry and let's figure out how to move forward. I love you guys. I mean that. Jackie and Anoa, I love you too. Even if we all don't agree, I don't give a shit. I love you. You're part of this movement. And I hope to God we can find a way to heal this divide. I'm Steve with Real Progressives. Have a good night, everybody.